Hi, everyone. This will be a reboot of an episode series we had done once before about how to set up a Shabbat worship where we focus on the words of Yahshua, Jesus. And so this is going to be a reboot of how to set up a Yeshua words only Shabbat service. And just want to show you when you are setting this up. This is I intended for a Zoom meeting, but it can be adapted to an in-person meeting as well, and just use on screen slides. So if you're waiting around to begin, let's say you'd say half hour earlier and you want to set the mood, you for the Zoom or otherwise, we created a link here to a video and you just set it going and then you leave your Zoom open or your meeting hall open and this is what you will hear. I think it's an interesting song. I'm going to play it from the middle here. All right, so I think you could hear he was singing the Shema. That is a prayer that Jesus taught us to pray in Mark 12. So we grab it here in the bottom left. It says YouTube, and you'll see that. And I have a little logo for the group that made this, or the individual. Shema Yahuwah Live, devoted to Yah. So that works perfectly fine. Just click that, and that'll work for you. So now this is in the PowerPoint. And you could try the same thing in the PDF as well. I'll show you what will happen if you do it on your PDF. So this is my PDF page, and you click the button here. It's going to be a little different. And there's several other song videos that we have the same issue. So please pay attention. This will be the answer in each of those subsequent examples. So here we go. Click that. It's going to say, this document is trying to connect to YouTube. If you trust the site, choose allow. If you do not trust the site, choose block. So then you hit allow. Okay. And there you go. And it'll take you out. All right, so now I want to show you how I'm going to get the PowerPoint and the PDF to you. I have Airtable, a very great database, and it's free. For the basics, you get everything you need most of the time, unless you're a business person. You may need more. Anyway, so you'll see this in the link I'm going to provide in the description to this video, and then you press that link, and it will let you choose to download a PowerPoint or download a PDF. Either one will work, and that's as simple as it is. Just double-click either one of these, and then you can have that for the future, and then run a service using PowerPoint or PDF. Okay, and someone has to be the moderator, so somebody pick whoever that moderator will be. Moderator is not there to tell people what to think or believe or whatever, but simply set the actions in motion for everybody to participate. And that's to be a servant of all. That's a good thing. So try to get a volunteer for that. That would be a useful service. And the other thing we understand the uniqueness of a church that follows Yeshua Jesus. Okay, and in these services we actually use Jesus' proper name, Yeshua, and many of you don't know Jesus that way, but that's uh, our belief of what his name should be pronounced as. Other people say Yeshua, very small marginal change between a sound or a e sound. But his name means salvation of Yah, so Yahshua does make sense as the correct pronunciation. Once we finally figured out, this is kind of a modern phenomenon that based on early Christian writings, they found out that Yahweh was pronounced exactly like Yahweh. And of course, there's disputes on that. I'm not going to say Nehemiah Gordon's incorrect. It's just simply the earliest church pronounced it Yahweh, the holy name, and that's how even the Encyclopedia of Judaism says they've recovered the correct pronunciation that way. But of course, Nehemiah Gordon has his own views. So I'm not going to get into that. But anyway, that's what we believe, and that's how we pronounce the name. And then we say, what's our motto? So we say, the moderator says, will someone read the motto of our group? And then somebody volunteers. And then this is what it would say. Truly, truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is an apostle greater than the one who sent him. John 13:16, Young's literal translation. And maybe when people are first coming along, you should explain why we start with this verse. Well, because the word apostle is in there. And people say, well, I've never heard this verse read that way. And you're right. You've never heard this word read this way. But that's actually what it says in Greek. The word is apostle there, apostolos. Why wasn't it translated? Only 3 of 31 Bible versions at BibleHub.com translate it this way, Young's Literal being the most prominent. Why does that happen? Well, because we can't have in normative Christianity the belief that an apostle is inferior to Jesus. We can actually have the idea that an apostle named, and we call him Bob. We don't use his name. Bob can be superior to Yahshua Jesus. And that's not true. Jesus says so. So you have to follow the teachings of Jesus. And that's the whole premise of the group's meeting. And this verse solidifies that right off the bat. And then, by the way, we had a member use Ron made a version of this using a Mac, and the Keynote program is excellent. And so you can do this effect where the pages seem to roll up and down. So that's another great thing about the PowerPoint, which is better than the PDF because of that one fact. The other motto of our group, will the next person please read it, would be the next step. Whoever wants to volunteer for that. Then it reads, for one is your rabbi, your teacher, the Messiah, and you are all brothers and sisters, Adelphoi. And lots of people will translate that and just use the English version, which is brothers. But that's not the way it works in Greek. This would be understood to be brothers and sisters or siblings. So you could use a single word, siblings. So it meant siblings, but I think it's better to say brothers and sisters to kind of show that this is an equal, we have an equal representation of women and men. It's not meant to be divisive in any way. And this is why Jesus said this. There's one who is your rabbi, your teacher. He also said in John 10:16, he's our sole pastor. So that's just another fact. But let's keep going here. Now, the next premise of our group is that no one is in charge except Yeshua Jesus. Okay, so let's listen. And through Jesus is Yahweh controlling the meeting, right? So and our entire doctrines have to be Yahweh centric because that's where Jesus points us to. The Our Father is a prayer not to himself, but to the Father. That's where Jesus directs us primarily. It's not that you can't ask Jesus for help. He says you can ask me for things, but he does direct us to the Father as the primary person who we need to address because Yahweh is, Jesus says, the only true God is who? The Father. Where's that? John 17:1-3. But I digress. Anyway, this is the next thing we say. And then typically somebody who knows Greek could be volunteered to do this if you know Greek. But if you don't, it still can be used by anybody. But Jesus, Yeshua, called them unto him and said, you know that the rulers, the archon, so you've heard the word hierarchy. That means holy archy, holy rulership. And that's how they got around this verse. The Roman Catholic Church says, well, we can have archy as long as it's holy. And so in Greek, the word holy is hieros. So they just added the word hieros in front of archy, and you get hierarchy, and you get a holy archy, and that's a totally legitimate thing to do. So this is a great point for teaching as people go along. You can modify and explain why this verse is so important and how it was subverted by doctrine. So you could have hierarchy as long as you don't have archy. Unholy archy you can't have, but you could have holy hierarchy. Anyway, let's keep reading. But Yeshua, Jesus, called them unto him and said, you know that the rulers, the archon of the Gentiles, exercise dominion over them, and they that are great exercise authority upon them. But it shall not be so among you, but whosoever will be great among you, let him be your servant. Matthew 20, verses 25-26. That's the NIV. So the person reads all of that and includes the verse at the end so we know where it came from. And then we move right into the main part of a service, and that would be the Shema. But we do the Shema several different ways, and this is have it sung 2 different ways, you'll see, and then have it read aloud, because this is central to the worship of Yahweh. This is key. And if we don't have this, and Christianity today doesn't have any worship of Yahweh, 0. Do you hear any worship? They'll say they are Father, but it's recitation. It's not a real love of God. So this song is beautiful. Beautiful way to start a meeting. And I'm just going to play it a little bit for you, and then you'll see how beautiful it is, and then you decide. But Again, you do the same thing I showed you earlier. You click the button there, YouTube there, and then it'll come up to YouTube. It'll switch on your computer if you're using PowerPoint or PDF. Now, just to give a little more introduction, I'm going to play for you the video so you can see who this person is at the same time. But in the actual meeting, you have to, as a Zoom controller, I do the Zoom there. So the Zoom allows you to just share sound, and this video that the people see will have all these words here so you can read the words. And I think reading the words is very important to memorize, particularly the way to say Shema Israel Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. That is just a beautiful thing to remember and try to memorize. And so that's why I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you just for this clip the lady speaking, so you can kind of put a face to the words. But when you do this, you try to not have it done. If you can't do it, then you have to go completely out to YouTube and just show her video, but you don't have the words on screen. So anyway, I'm going to set that up right now and enjoy. I'm going to just about have a 10-second or 15-second clip.
I won't tell you that he loves me. I won't tell you that he saved my life, but I can say as loud and clear as I can sing from my lips to yours that there's one of our God in every one of our lives, and that's why we sing Shema Israel Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Oh, and that's why we sing Shema Israel Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Oh, and that's why we sing.
All right, now this is the next video we do. It's another version of the Shema, but it's very different because it's actually the exact way that it would have been sounded out in song, in Hebraic song, in the era of David, or when the Psalms were created. So they all have this tonal frequency and rhythm. So his this guy Michael David's spouse, as I recollect, she went to a music school. He did too, and they basically found out that the Bible had encoded in it, in the Psalms, the actual chords to hit for various song points. And they were there all the time, but nobody noticed them until this professor in Ventura, California, found this out recently. And now he's an expert at recreating the true original sound. So I'm not going to play it. It's a surprise, so you'll enjoy that. But you just do the same thing I told you in the last episode. You click the YouTube and it'll play right away. And then the next thing we did is ever since I learned there was this Hannah's Prayer of Praise inside of the book of Samuel, I always, was impressed by its beauty. And so we include that, and we have a reading of one page at a time or a section at a time. And we like the World English Bible because it's the only Bible on the Bible Gateway as far as I know, that uses the word Yahweh where it belongs instead of hiding it from us with the word Lord. And so you can see where it's beautiful, the prayer. And then there's various sections. It's a pretty long prayer, right? And it actually has a message about the Messiah. Yahweh will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king and exalt the horn of his anointed Messiah. And that reminds us in Psalm 2, there's a connection between the Messiah and the kingship, and then the Son of God. There was all three the same: Messiah, Son of God, and the King. Our King, God's Son, Messiah. And that's how we're supposed to understand it. And a lot of times that's not understood by Christians. We don't even know what the word Christ means, but it meant he's a king, the anointed king of Israel to be. Okay, and we have another video we really like to play. In the same process, you hit the YouTube at the bottom, and this is a song called Alleluia. It's played to the tune that you may be all familiar with, that plays on television a lot. But she redid the words, and it's beautiful. And since it's on YouTube, if she's using the same tonal frequency, YouTube will monetize this for the original copyright authors. So as long as you use YouTube as the source of where you're getting the link from and you're doing it actively, then you should be safe. I'm not I do copyright law, but I'm going to just say it should be safe because the artist is being compensated by the way YouTube is set up. That's not always true in other forms of art that people use. So anyway, let's go to the next screen. And then other songs are here of all kinds of varieties. I have the top 100 songs of that look good to me, and then we have other songs here. The song right here is "This Day." This is the day Yahweh has made, a beautiful song. And then the 100 top songs are here. Again, you can find that. Now, most important, this is the command that Jesus said was the most important command of the Bible. Mark 12, 29, 31. This is where he talks about the Shema, God is one, and loving God with your whole heart, mind, and soul, and loving your neighbor as yourself, he adds in there as a second command. So now we had a sister recorded saying this one time in our group, so I'm going to show you the link down here. You just click that, and it'll be read for you. And having it done crisply and cleanly by Sister Mimi has been a blessing to us, so I hope it would be for you. And I'm going to play the full clip because it's only 59 seconds.
Prepare to listen to Yahshua's words, quoting Deuteronomy 6, verses 4 to 5. One of the scribes, having come near, having heard them disputing, knowing he answered them well, questioned him, which is the first commandment of all? And Yahshua answered him, the first of all the commandments is, Hear, O Israel, Yahweh is our God, Yahweh is one. And thou shalt love Yahweh out of all thy heart, and out of thy soul, and out of all thy understanding, and out of all thy strength. This is the first command. And the second is like it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Greater than these there is no other command. Mark 12, verses 29 to 31.
And then we sort of have a little library back here. If you're interested in it, you find some Yahweh-centric psalms. You'll find some psalm that's a contemporary one, Shema Israel by Hadad. If you want a little bit of a rock song, you have Yahweh You Reign by Mason Clover. And then we get down to praise and worship. So we basically come to here next. And a wonderful thing was found in Dead Sea Scrolls. It was Psalm 145, and that psalm had these words in between the verses: praise Yahweh and praise his name forever and ever. So, and on and on it goes. It's an acrostic, meaning from the first letter of the alphabet of Hebrew to the last, every one of these verses begins with the next alphabetical letter. So in our parallel would be, this would be the letter A would begin here, and then B would be there, and C would be here. So this is something that people are obviously memorizing, and they could keep track where they were by the acrostic itself. So what we do is we do one panel at a time, typically sometimes two panels, and everybody, somebody has to introduce the reading and explain that what we do is one person reads the dark text, and all of us in unison then do a response, praise Yahweh and praise his name forever and ever. Okay. And then you can scroll through it and pick which ones you want to do each week. And what we also did is we adapted Psalm 146 to this. So we just took verses 9 and 10 and added the praise Yahweh and praise his name forever. And one of the wonderful things you can tell people as you do this is that Jesus probably did this in the time of when he was on earth, because the Dead Sea Scrolls, even though some of these date from 200 BC, a lot of them date into the 100 BC, maybe even into the Christian era. So it's not improbable that they were still being done this way at the time of Christ. So he would have been engaged in this. And this isn't, remember, the Dead Sea Scrolls are not a sect in Qumran. That was a myth that was created for 40 years. It was the Library of Jerusalem was a custodian of all these records. And so this means the central authorities were very aware of this psalm being used for a song, response song, probably even at the temple itself. But that's a whole nother series of episodes we've dealt with that issue. Then here's Psalm 145 again, and then Psalm 145. So we mixed it up a little bit. Now I want to get to the prayer meeting time. Now you can always do prayer if you want, if you think it's consistent with Jesus' words, out loud, with one person praying by themselves and everybody listening. That's the way it's done in standard churches. We don't do that, not at this time. But I'm not going to say anything else, but read this passage, read this little message about what Jesus said about praying in your closet. And that didn't mean you didn't pray necessarily in certain situations that were formalistic, where you just do a standard blessing. And I think there's reasons for that being okay. What Jesus didn't want to see happen is where people would do it for the wrong motivations. Let's put it that way. And so what we do instead is we have a personal praise and thanksgiving time where one of us takes a Word document and puts up on the screen and then writes down or types up as people are praying their prayer requests. So there's a moderator. I do the moderation where we get together and I'll put the first person's name down and the second person, third person, fourth, and all that. And then as I go through it, everybody is asked, what's your praise or prayer request? And then we find out. And we hear all kinds of miracles from week to week. So I think prayer is powerful. So this is a very important part of every service. Now, by the way, I should tell you the time it takes to do a service like this is about 2 hours, and I try to keep it strictly to 2 hours. The moderator has to keep track of the time, and so that we don't make this so lengthy that people can't fit this into their day. And but 2 hours, I think we all can fit 2 hours, and we watch movies of an hour and 40 minutes. I think we can fit a 2 hour Shabbat service where we're praising and worshiping our Father in heaven and thanking our Lord Yahshua for his work and guidance and his message and his words and his death on the cross, of course. So that's it. So there you go. And then we for a long time we didn't do a lesson just to get all those other parts done right. But then we're now able to allocate about 20 minutes for a lesson, and there's a good opportunity for participants to be other than the moderator. The moderator would rather not be doing teachings because then the role of moderator gets mixed up. So if you can come in and teach, I think that would be the best thing. Leave the moderator being the moderator, and you find people who want to teach something interesting. Uh, anyway, and then there's a built-in lesson. If you pick this up, you can follow it to do at least one episode with our built-in links here. So this is just a picture. It's not the video itself. So if you want to see this video, you have to hit this YouTube. And what this is about is Isaiah 56. Jesus says it's a house of prayer, and he gives some important, significant remarks. And this man isn't even a Christian, but he's helping us understand what the Lord Yahshua is saying from a Hebraic viewpoint. And his episode is called "A House of Prayer for All Nations," and he explains it to us. And why is that important? Well, when you get over to Isaiah 56, Yahweh tells Isaiah about the salvation for the Gentiles. How is that going to happen? So he basically says, no foreigner who has joined himself to Yahweh should say, Yahweh will surely separate me from his people. Do not let the eunuch say, behold, I am a dry tree. So this is where God Yahweh is speaking to the Gentile, particularly the foreigners, the gur. It's translated many different ways, sojourners, gur, aliens, foreigners, and so on. So strangers. Nobody seems to make up their mind. Basically, what it is anybody who's a non-Israelite living in Jerusalem. In Israel. That's what it means. So let's see what else we got here. Oh, and then So then the other thing is, the Gentiles are supposed to keep the Sabbath. Okay, why is that important? If you do that, I'll bring you into my holy mountain. Then what else do I have to do? Well, you have to get. Let me see if I see it here. And hold fast my covenant. What's the covenant? The Ark of the Covenant. What does that remind you of? Oh, the 10 Commandments. So that was the minimum at the time before Christ. Now Christ has come and he has a lot more commands, if you hadn't noticed, than just 10. So, and there are other commands also in the law that specifically mention the ger. And again, it could be a translated foreigner, sojourner, stranger, alien, so on. You just have to dig it up and find those commands that apply to you. Anyway, so that's an important message. If you're a Gentile, most of us are all Gentiles, so we need to know how to have salvation. And if we ignore this, and Jesus quotes from this passage, then we're ignoring our grounds of salvation. And why are we doing that? Because we're listening to Bob. That's our view. Okay, so now this is a long passage in Isaiah, so you can do all kinds of searches on studies on it. The next thing we do is Balaam's prayer, and I'll tell you why. Okay, so now Balaam did a prayer, a blessing over Israel, and that was the words that begin it are ma tovu. So that two words have been used to identify a part in the service in Judaism since to the time of Moses, that this would signify a prayer. You would read out the prayer of Balaam. Someone would read out the prayer. So again, this could be the moderator, but actually it can be anyone in the group can read it because it's on screen. So I'm going to show you. What we did is we've taken the ma tovu, and I think ma tovu in Hebrew begins here. How goodly are thy tents? That begins ma tovu. But to have the whole thing is very useful as well, because then you know more of the background of what is going on. If you looked at the prayer that is read in the Jewish synagogues today, they only take a very little bit of it out, and then they have an embellishment of all kinds of prayer topics below that. And I just think keeping it more biblical is a better approach. So we're just using the exact words out of the book of Numbers, chapter 24. See over here, Numbers 24, Matovu. And if you want to read it, you can read it out loud, or you can just click here and you'll hear a reading of me reading this passage out in about 1 minute. And by the way, a good teaching in our particular congregation has been about Balaam. And so a little mini lesson each week couldn't be a bad thing to do. And the mini lesson would be simple. Balaam was a prophet of Christ. He was the one who did the star prophecy that said a star would rise over Israel. It would be signifying where the birth of the Messiah would be and the ruler of the world to come. So that is one of the most famous prophecies outside of Israel and in the Roman Empire. They had heard of this star prophecy, and so they always were vying to hope that an emperor would have a star rising over Israel that would be for them. They wanted that sign for themselves. Of course, pagans believe in all kinds of signs, but God's promise is for the people of Israel's benefit and their Messiah to come. So Balaam is a prophet of Christ, but what happened to him? He corrupted himself, and he taught the Israelites to eat meat sacrificed to idols. Well, there's somebody else in the New Testament in 1 Corinthians 8 and 1 Corinthians 10, Bob, who teaches it's okay to eat meat sacrificed to idols. And the only time you don't do it is if you're around a Christian who's concerned about eating it and you don't want to make them do something they're thinking is wrong. So don't eat it around them. But why should my conscience be bound by his conscience? So when I'm alone, I can do whatever I want. I'm going to eat my meat sacrificed to idols. So that was such an offense to Moses. Moses had Balaam killed, even though he's a prophet of Christ. Do you follow me, ladies and gentlemen? And clearly gave a prophecy here. And why did the Jewish people end up putting a prayer about Balaam in every service? Because I believe it would be nobody could ever forget that teaching someone to eating sacrifice to idols is a death penalty. Moses had him executed, and it didn't matter you're a prophet of Christ, you're still become a false prophet, a false teacher by doing that. And that should be a very object lesson about whether Bob should be accepted into canon. And again, we have a lot of information on our website about that. But this is a service time, so we just can use it for a little bit of education that even a prophet of Christ who falls, who teaches you it's okay to eat meat sacrificed to idols, is a false prophet and must be rejected. And in fact, dead, be killed if the law of Moses were executed. But in the time of Christ, the Roman Empire was in control, and anybody who was a Roman citizen couldn't even be executed by the religious authorities. So that wouldn't be able to be used. Anyway, and then the closing blessings. And so one of you, moderator typically, will read the closing blessings, and then it's a response. So amanu, meaning I believe or I affirm, is the response of the people present, and the moderator or whoever's volunteered to read this says, "May Yahweh bless you and watch over you. Amen. And then may Yahweh make his face shine to you and be gracious to you. Amen. May Yahweh raise his face to you and give you peace. Amen." And that's it. So you should be able to do this on a regular basis, God willing. And if you have any questions of how this is done, just let me know. You will find the PDF and the PowerPoint available in a link into my Airtable, where by just clicking a button, you will, as I said earlier, you'll be able to download whichever one you want to use, or both, and then begin doing this with your family, just maybe with your children, maybe with your wife or your husband. So God bless. Take care, everybody. Ciao. Bye.